Talkopolis Programming is sponsored in part by Dev Digital, Innovative Software Solutions. The Plastic Surgery Centre of Nashville with Doctors Mary Gingras and Melinda Hawes. Envision the possibilities. Hi guys, Kane Harrison here. Welcome to Serious Startups, where we explore the nuts and bolts of successful entrepreneurship. We are once again joined by our fantastic panel, Dave Ledgerwood and Monica Selby. Once again, no John.
John. Yeah, that's all we're going to say about that.
Yeah. John Maddox. Love the guy. Never here.
I've forgotten what he looks like.
I know.
To be fair, I guess he's missed only twice as many as me, right?
I'm not sure he's
That's
real.
True. No, but you're only as good as your last
effort.
He's
a mythical startup beast.
You are only as good as your last effort. Hey, yeah. We've been talking about some fantastic stuff that's got a lot to do with entrepreneurship, because that's what this show's about. But what we want to talk about is staying alive in the entrepreneurial game. Mm-hmm. Now, I think it sounds fantastic. It's like, you know, I'm starting this new business or I'm going to do this, but then when all that shine kind of wears off, sometimes you just kind of left with nothing.
When is it shiny again?
Dave, you were talking about, I mean, you've been in this game a long time. Talk about your experience.
Yeah, you know, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and you know, I know that when you do startups, your income and revenue from startups is really on a wild ride, you know, and that variability is what knocks people out a lot. You can't pay the bills when, you know, one month you make this much and then the next month you had to invest in your business, so you don't make any money. Well, you still had a mortgage, and Monica and I have talked about having families while we, you know, have entrepreneurial ventures. And so early on, I realized that, you know, what we must do is, you know, get some kind of flat revenue curve in there as well. And so that had to be some kind of consulting or services revenue. And so a lot of people will tell you, you know, you got to focus on your startup. You got to, you know, spend all your time on there, right? Throw all in, or no one's going to invest in you. And I just simply found that impossible, and that, you know, you needed to have some kind of backup revenue. And what you would hope to do would be find at least things that have similar themes, so that I could say, you know, I work with early stage startups and I work in these spaces, and that's good enough. And so entrepreneurial education has become a thing. So I have some businesses in that, and I do some consulting in that, but that took a long time. It's been you know, 8 years now. Yeah.
And I would say though, Ledge, that right there is the problem with what you just said. Like, even consulting is entrepreneurial. Right. So in a sense, that's not steady income either. Does that, like,
yeah, there's no question.
You've built it over 8 years, like you said, but for the entrepreneur who's just starting out, you know, how, you know, there have to be other ways.
Yeah, so I call that, you know, sort of startup revenue is like, you know, I have a company, and then what I would call like sort of this solopreneur revenue, like I get paid to do some kind of trade craft, which might be consulting or writing or freelance software development, or, you know, whatever that is. But yeah, there's no question. I mean, you're running a business right there too, so you have a learning opportunity to, and a ramp. Like, how do I get that going? How do I find work?
It takes a while to build that up.
So there's Elance and Odesk and things like that, but, you know, the price is low, and you got to build your reputation.
The Americans can figure out how to make money on Elance.
It's brutal.
I would really appreciate the advice.
I want you guys to talk about, I mean, this is one problem that I think we all have, is that when we start off, sometimes we start more than one business at once as well. So we're juggling a bunch of things. One can get to be a little bit more successful than the other one, and that is often the case. They never all rise together. But I think you have to be very careful not to, you know, rob Peter to pay Paul in that aspect. I know that there's some people out there who will shift money from one of their businesses into another one, and which can be at the detriment to that. So that's something that I've kind of struggled with a little bit, in that, you know what, I am, you know, a founding partner of this and a founding partner of that, or an employee of this, and that's who I am in those roles. And so that's how I'm also going to take my income from those roles. And then, you know, to live down here is here I am, not necessarily take money from this business to give it to this one to ensure that this survives.
Well, you find that, like I found, I was using myself as a pass-through. But it really was going, you know, from one account to the other and back to another business.
Because you were paying yourself from one business and then investing.
And I was investing in the other one, and that became rather damaging. You know, I think you can't do that. You need to pay yourself and know that that money is gone. And you know, it's like the Dave Ramsey, pay yourself first kind of, you know, you have to do it. If you're not sustaining your life, and you simply can't support your business entities, and you have to ask yourself too, it's like, if I need to keep putting money into this, you know, am I just passionately engaged in a thing that's going to fail.
Right.
You know, what is wrong with what I'm doing that it continues to consume all my capital?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it shouldn't be that way. And so I'm a big advocate of, you know, early revenue. Like find a way to, you know, do the lean startup thing, MVP, and you've got to be selling something fast. And people have to pay you. And if you can't figure that out or you don't have enough time for that, then stop.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I mean, obviously, bootstrapping has become a big thing because money can get a little tight with startups. But most successful entrepreneurs that have spoken to in my time anyway, the vast majority never use their own money. I mean, and this even stems from...
You think the vast majority?
I would say most people do use their own money.
You think, really?
I would say so, too.
Well, the statistics would tell you, you know, some 90% of people never get any funding. So,
well, interesting.
What are they spending? Credit cards?
So, what would you say that? Where would you pigeonhole yourself in entrepreneurship? In tech? Is that where you put yourself?
Yeah, tech-enabled businesses. You know.
I mean, I would shift myself more to entertainment in that area.
So,
and so when I'm talking about film and all those sorts of things, I mean, people don't use their own money, especially the successful people.
Like to produce films. And
but they do in their first ones.
Maybe their first.
Yeah. And I think that as you get a track record, people are going to give you more money.
Yeah, I think that in that, you know, this is obviously pigeonholing a small market, but something that I'm involved in. The successful people have learnt how to sell and use other people's money to be successful.
Right. I mean, don't we all want to do that? Right.
Super difficult to do.
You know, I can now use my track record and I say I can get you a return on your money doing the thing that I do.
But you need to not get used to using your own money, I think, is the point that I'm getting to. And I think people get used to that. It's kind of dipping into their own pocket constantly instead of saying, okay, now we've made a small business. What stage are we at next? Do we go on
that risk and return thing, right? I mean, if you use your own money, you own all of it. So if I make a wild success with my own money, I hope to do that.
Sure.
You know, then.
Sure, but 100% of zero is still zero.
Right. So you give away a little bit, and you convince people that that's worth some money, and you can show them return. You still need a solid plan. Yeah. And I think we like to run away from that now. That, you know, we don't need business plans. You know, we have growth hacking and all these things. You know, the reality is, like, what are you doing that makes some money? You should growth hack a thing that already has traction. You know, so now I know I demonstrated in little fashion that I have a thing that makes some money, and now I want to do it 1,000,000 times. Is scale. That's not figuring out your business model on the fly.
I will say, though, going back to the original topic of having income while you're starting up, you know, Ledge does that with consulting. He has lots of experience. He's been working on that for 8 years. That may or may not be a possibility for a lot of entrepreneurs. So you might have to get a job. And I know that's so terrible to say, but you might need to get a job to pay the bills. You might need to drive for Uber or Lyft. You might need to... Barista. You might need to go to an office and get a real job.
No, you know what? No.
So my old co-founder, my first company, that's what he's doing right now. If there was ever somebody that didn't want to have a job, it was him. And he was telling me yesterday, he's like, it's crazy. Twice a month, they put money in my bank account and it covers my bills every month.
Right, and it just shows up there.
He's the happiest he's ever been.
Like, some days I don't work very hard. Yeah, you know, but I think that you can go about that construction of different types of revenue, and you might be on somebody's W-2 payroll, but you still think of yourself as an entrepreneur, and that's what's been important to me. You know, that the legal way that you, company X, want to pay me has nothing to do with the way that I think here, like I work for me, I'm an entrepreneur. And if you choose that you want to put me on payroll because it's better for you, then that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, but you're still there and you can't leave that. If you start to get lazy and be in a job and not do your other stuff, then you're not an entrepreneur.
And I think that's the secret to revenue while starting up, is that you don't ever focus on, like, you have to pay the bills, but you don't stay satisfied with paying the bills. Because if you get satisfied with just paying the bills, then you're not an entrepreneur. But if you're looking to build a business, you figure out a way to pay your bills, and then you figure out a way to grow fast so that you can get out of doing the thing you don't want to do that's paying the bills.
Yeah. And your money management, I think, coming from that side of things is much better. And I want to go to the other end of the scale. Both you guys have your finger on the pulse in places like San Francisco and successful places that raise a lot of money. I mean, where it's kind of seems to be easier to raise money on an idea. Let's talk about serial money raisers, which is opposite. These are people who raise money, get paid high salaries from their companies, who never really, the company never really goes anywhere, but they are able to go and raise more money. I know it's completely opposite end of the scale, but big problem as well, because you can get used to having this big pile of cash right here, where I think your thinking is different. I mean, I would think different if I had a big pile. Would you be as desperate? Would you be as hungry? Would you maintain that entrepreneurial spirit of totally thinking around the wall all the time? Share with perhaps our Nashville people who a lot of companies are bootstrapped in Nashville.
Right.
That sort of climate.
Well, I would say that first of all, there's a whole conversation in the Valley about founder salaries, and actually, depending on the VC, depending on the stage of the company, and depending on the age of the founder, it's actually you're very looked down on if you take a big salary, like you said. I mean, it would be big to us because to live in San Francisco is like expensive. 5 times what it is in Nashville. But still, like younger founders, early stage companies, and then certain VCs insist that founders like barely get by, ramen profitable, right? Like that's all they're looking for. The other side of the spectrum, and you get this a lot from older entrepreneurs with kids, older VCs. They do pay real salaries out of their capital raises, and your burn rate is crazy, right? Because suddenly you're paying yourself, to live modestly in San Francisco, $150,000, right? To live modestly, right. And so suddenly your burn rate is tripling because the CEO is having, and I know of an entrepreneur in particular that does this. I mean, she has to pay a nanny to take care of the children so she can build her company. That's expensive. The nanny lives in San Francisco too, so you're paying all these kinds of salaries, and your burn rate goes crazy. But then, you're able to raise. It seems easier, and I would venture that if we talked to entrepreneurs in the Valley, we would hear that it's not so easy to raise money, but it sure does seem like it.
Because you only hear about the raises. I think, right. The number of pitches is vastly higher too. I contend that probably the number of good ideas that get funded as a percentage of the attempts is probably similar across the board. I don't have data for that, but.
I mean, it was interesting to find out, though.
I was out there a month or so ago, and there was about 150 of us, and most of the companies, there was like this much separation from one idea to the next. It was so close, and probably only 2 of those people are going to get any cash.
You get contacted by these things, all the time. You see the startup media business. It's like, wait, that's exactly like. I remember, I sorted through the applications for the accelerators, and one year it was like, no joke, like 30% of them were going to revolutionize the event industry. And I'm going, no, you're not.
You're really,
and so it gets to where I start.
Sorry to tell you, but
it allows me a really easy way to filter, like, oh, good, event industry, trash. Because I know that's not
good to know.
True.
Right.
Well, that's not, it goes every year, right?
It's a cycle.
And you're going to be, before you were going to be, Waze, right? Because Google acquired Waze, and it's all about eyeballs and blah, blah, blah. People like, if you don't write your plan in a way that is somehow believable that your exit is, you're not going to be them. And you certainly, it was the old, like, first you look for Facebook, now you look for, then it was Waze, and maybe it's like, I don't know, WhatsApp, right? It's just, they're not going to be that. And so if you say that in your plan, it's an easy filter.
Well, again, loved having you guys here, and we'll try and get John back for the next episode. But this is where we do talk about the nuts and bolts. Successful entrepreneurship, we do like to focus on, of course, but it's hard, and we all know it's hard. And if you have to go out and work a job to live the dream life, then that's what you have to do. Thanks so much, guys, for coming by.
Thanks, Kane.
Always fun.
It is. And we'll see you next time on Serious Startups.